Hi, this is Paul. I want to pick up on something just at the end of this video. The whole video was well worth it, but here at the end, something really important.
I mean, and in some ways, it is. There's an illusion that we have, like when the fires start burning, and then you start to pay attention to all these fires, and you don't realize, that
Uh,
the
uh,
reason why you should care about the emergencies that are kind of popping up, they're more important than those emergencies, even though the emergencies are screaming. Uh, you know, that there's a kind of emptiness to I mean I say that, but like I mean the past few months of my life have been like just this nonstop fires, right? Like just like all these things that are happening that you have to take care of, and then you start to forget the like you said, the core, right? The core of saying, well, it's like, actually, what is it that I actually care about? And the relationship with my family, like you said, the relationship with God. And so why am I just paying attention to all these fires? But it's a tough one. It's hard to do.
I'm seeing like three different things that come out of that it's maybe useful to tease out. Two of them are very similar, and I see this a lot, particularly maybe in the world that includes both of us.
Mm.
Um, so one is I call it the philanthropist's deception. So the
Mm.
philanthropist's deception is the devil on your shoulder who says it's okay to not live according to your values all the time because there's a way to buy your way back into them, basically. Right? Don't actually have all of your choices be in alignment with your values. It's okay to have.
now, I'm just going to include the rest of this video because I don't have a lot of time, and you should listen to it because what he gives is all good advice, but I didn't find this level of advice to be unique. I'll say it that. It's good, basic Christian advice. Now, again, Jordan Hall is just getting started in this Christian stuff. Jordan, of course, brings a ton of other wisdom and experience and insight to this space. But it was really interesting that, again, the 3 points that he gives, they're all graded points. I'm going to include them here in the video, and you should listen to them. But what Jonathan is talking about on one level is just he's gone from, and I know this, he's gone from an icon carver and then into social media. And this social media space is different. Because if he was, let's say, a famous icon carver, well, there might be more Orthodox churches that are being built in America in demand and wanting his services, but actually, I'm probably not going to just include it. Just you can just listen to it yourself. It'll keep this video shorter, and many of you probably have listened to that whole video anyway. But this is what's happening now, and what Jonathan has to sort of figure out is basically how to be what he is. It's a question of vocation. And what immediately came to mind was so John Vervaeke is now doing the lectern. And this whole video that was released 2 days ago, it's just a 17-minute video, and it's kind of a compilation of a bunch of things from him. And this video too is about calling. And I think that's what Jonathan is wrestling with, because in some ways our callings have these shapes. And I've been reading through I've been reading through this book, Henry J. Kuiper, The Shaping of the Christian Reformed Church, 1907 to 1962. It's a really good book. I'm very much enjoying it. But what you see is the Christian Reformed Church going through a transformation, and the level of transformation from over the last 100 years in the Christian Reformed Church is just absolutely unbelievable. Henry J. Kuiper, what you see in, let's say, a lot of people came to the United States. A lot of people came from the Netherlands at the end of the 19th century and up until the First World War. You had a lot of ministers that were sort of kept going back and forth between the Netherlands and the United States. This isn't that different from, let's say, the colonial period in the United States when the American colonies were much more wedded to England than they were the rest of the world. Well, the Christian Reformed Church especially before the First World War, was deeply wed to the Netherlands. So you had ministers going back and forth. And now Henry J. Kuiper was born in America. Some of those scans didn't necessarily work out real well, but I got better as I went. But he became one of the key leaders for the Christian Reformed Church in sort of the middle period of the 20th century. And he had a number of things that he introduced. Now the level of mandatory in the Christian Reformed Church before the Second World War, Americans would think that this was cultish, except of course you could leave. But except of course, with these immigrant groups, the cost of leaving a family church was a very high cost. So one of the big programs that he instilled in all of his churches was mandatory profession of faith catechesis for young married couples who had not yet made profession of faith. And you would think, wow, how many could there have been? Well, that was probably all of the young adults now remember, at that point too, before the First World War, 3 of my 4 grandparents only had 8th grade educations, and the 4th was my grandfather, who became a Christian Reformed minister and was part of this ministerial track that was sort of a high school, prep school, college prep school, theological education, and then out they'd go into the ministry. But the other 3 of my grandparents had 8th grade educations, and so people would get married young, and then what they'd have in these churches was these young couples, and they hadn't made profession of faith. Now, profession of faith is sort of like confirmation and sort of Lutheran terms. It would be basically you begin as an adult. Well, these are married young couples, and it was mandatory. And of course, if you're sneaking out to the movies, you're going to be put on a watch list. If you skip church without an excuse, you're going to be put on a watch list that the council was going to keep track of, and the elders would go out and do a lot of regular family visitations to make sure that this whole struggle cohered. And there was no, this was just simply how the community ran. And this individual was, again, probably the most influential leaders in the Christian Reformed Church between, in the significant center of the 20th century. Now, of course, in the 60s, that whole regime began to change. And what's so fascinating is that many of the churches in Classis Grand Rapids East that are named in here that were very much a part of this regime, well, they're at the center of a whole nother controversy that's going on in the Christian Reformed Church, which is absolutely fascinating. But what you see is this reshaping of calling. And you see that with John Vervaeke in this video too.
Remaining resolute in inhabiting the human position of holding together finitude and transcendence. I'm finite, but I don't despair because I can also transcend, but I don't give in to hubristic inflation because I am finite, holding those two together. This whole endeavor, ever since awakening from the meaning crisis, has not been just a project, and it has not been just something that I'm doing as a hobby. And increasingly, as I move towards the philosophical Silk Road, it has become clear to me that this is not, it's not even right to call it a vocation. It's even more than a vocation. I mean, vocation means being called, and I feel deeply called, but there's more. And I feel that increasingly, and I hope I'm showing up with due humility about this. I'm called into service to the advent of the sacred, addressing the meaning crisis, and I think of both of those as deeply intertwined. And I think of this as the most important thing that I can be called to do, and therefore I consider it an ethical and obligation that I give it my very, very best. And I need, therefore, to show up in the right way, but I need also for the framing and the platform and the vehicle of teaching to be properly attuned so that I can show up and give my best.
Jordan Peterson, Peterson Academy and all the other educational things that are going on right now in our world. We're living in a time of where it's sort of hard to figure out not only who we are but what we do. This conversation now, there's a video part of this conversation with Louise Perry and Bridget Phetasy, but the whole podcast, again, sorry, the parts in the podcast that are not in the YouTube were some of the best parts, where they really dig into, for these women, well, they were writers, and Bridget Phetasy is a comedian and a writer, and they're really wrestling with, especially for women, well, do we show pictures of our children? Do we name the names of our husband? To what degree are we open? To what degree are we closed? Back to the Megan Dom podcast. I got a nice note in the comments from the maker of the podcast. Where do we go next? And again, in this podcast, there's a really interesting section. I don't have time to sort of pull it out and do it now, but there's a really interesting section about where Megan Dom is really wrestling with vocation. All of this is moving quickly. And then a friend of mine, not in the YouTube space, sent me this announcement this morning, which I know some of you complain because I've never done anything on Calvin Robinson here. There's been a number of people that have tried to set me up with conversations with him, especially when I was in the UK. They all fell through, but...
Well, for us anyway, is it you're leaving? In fact, this is going out on Sunday morning. You're leaving today.
Today, yes.
Can I ask, first of all, you don't have to swear or whatever, but what are you leaving to do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for saying that. It's bittersweet for me too. I'm going to miss all of you guys out here. We've been fighting together for so long now. I'm going to West Michigan to a full-time parish ministry. I'm going to become a full-time priest over there. And I'm going to continue the fight from there. So
He's going to Grand Rapids, Michigan. It was a colleague of mine from West Michigan that said, oh, things are going to get even more interesting because, of course, Calvin Robinson likes to play in the press. And so at the time that the Christian Reformed Church is going through what it is to have this guy go to West Michigan and listen to what he says.
The parishioners have already said they're going to build a studio in the parish hall so that we can still do the media ministry, but bring it into the parish. So I don't have two separate vocations. It's all going to be part of the same thing, which I'm quite excited about.
Yeah. And I thought, oh. And again, I'll put the link to this below too. Again, Jordan Hall gives all fine advice to Jonathan. But we are in uncharted waters, and Christians are having to figure this out. Neoplatonist non-theists are having to figure this out. Jungian university professors are having to figure this out. UK Anglican clergy are having to figure this out. The world is changing, and we are all trying to figure this out. So, and, Sam just put out a new appeal to Gavin Orland. And to me, some of what's going on in this space is super interesting because Gavin, although he's in YouTube and he's sort of continuing to play by the script of Christian YouTube, Sam sort of recognizes that TLC and Christian YouTube don't really work in the same ways. And so, when I was thinking about what Jonathan was saying, and I'm out of time right now. Yeah, we'll see if I pick this up after my appointment or what. All right, I'm not done. I'm back. And so after I had a conversation with someone, and then and I thought, I've got to go back and I've got to listen to more of what Jordan said and more, because I just had the sense, I mean, probably a lot of you people wonder how I make these videos. Now, to some of you, the fact that very little to zero planning goes into many of these videos does not surprise you. I know others of you imagine that I'm just spending hours and hours going over and over all of this online, and that, there's 10 hours that goes into every single hour of PVK videos. No, there's about 1 hour that goes into every single hour of PVK videos, maybe an hour and 10 minutes after I finish the upload and the thumbnail. So, yeah, that's what you get at this channel. But let's keep going.
Immediately. And of course, that's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, who's making that choice? How do you know whether or not that's actually your cross, or if it's somebody else's cross that you're racing to strap yourself to, right?
That's right.
And that's
right there, that's what it gets to calling, because Jordan had just said, we take up our cross, but which is your cross? And so, for Peugeot, he's got to figure out, okay, icon maker, YouTuber, publisher, father, congregant, I don't know exactly what kind of, and whatever you want to describe as. I mean, the thing about a church like the Orthodox Church, you just don't have, like you do in some Protestant churches, what am I? And we're all just trying to figure that out. What am I? Especially now in this space.
That's subtle. Right? That's in the level of like where I guess that'd be Luciferian, the Luciferian sense of temptation, right? Temptation is the exact inverse of communion. And temptation, if it gets you just right, it's tricky. The whole point is that it's tricky, and you really, really think you're doing the right thing. That's the point. Like the stupid temptation, if I'm going to eat, whatever, 50 donuts and get sick, fair enough. But the point is, there's the really subtle.
Yeah, those aren't the worst ones. Like you said, the Luciferian temptations of your point is great. To think like, oh, I have to take care of this because, like I'm so special, and that, and this, like you said, the guy getting into the internet. That's such a perfect example, because like, I mean, I definitely found myself.
He just made the meme, of course, that, someone on the internet is saying something wrong, I must go and correct him or stop him. That was the joke that he made before, the part that I didn't play. I should have just played the whole thing.
Let's say paying way too much attention, to that type of stuff, and realize, hopefully at some point realizing that, what does it matter? Like, it doesn't really, and a lot of the, especially like the news cycle stuff, a lot of it is just flash in the pan stuff that we won't remember 3 months from now. And we've spent so much attention focusing on all these scandals and all of these things. And this, especially during the American election year, it's crazy. Like, going on Twitter is like, it'll drag you into hell really fast. And
please listen to what Jonathan is saying here. It is so true. I know everything in our culture, so I guess the debate is tonight, and I am not going to watch it. Everything in our culture is just screaming at us that somehow your imaginary participation in this drama is what ultimately matters. And it's like, probably not. Now, again, maybe you're a politician, maybe you work for a campaign, maybe this, maybe that. Pick up the crosses that you need to pick up. But the hardest part is figuring out what cross is mine. In this world, lots of crosses get born.
Captures you, and you realize that you've spent an hour scrolling down Twitter, and it's like that hour could have been spent in far more useful things,
including nothing.
including nothing. Exactly.
Well, it's funny. So as a practice, I've actually tried to cultivate noticing aesthetically the difference between the For You tab and the Following tab.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you can tell if you pay attention. The For You tab is palpably Luciferian.
Oh, yeah.
And palpably. And you're like, wait a minute, man, that tastes. Oh, I'm in the for you tab. Click.
But they also switch you over, I think, like without
all
you.
the time. Yeah,
They just switch you over to the For You tab. You don't even know that
you
it's
don't even know what
happening. Like,
happened. Yeah.
why am I seeing all this stuff? Like, it gets, yeah,
Okay, so this thing goes to the piece that's the top of that pyramid with regard to the fires, because
yeah,
then there's some fires that you're actually supposed to deal with.
yeah.
Right. The point is you're actually here for a purpose. And okay, so how do you discern that?
Mm.
And how do you notice, for example, that oftentimes the struggling with the fire is the purpose?
Mm.
Right? It's not the putting the fire.
And right there is probably the point of this video. The struggling with the fire. Is it the purpose? It's part of the cross we all must bear. Whether it's John Vervaeke figuring out his calling and vocation, Jordan Peterson filling, Jonathan, myself, Sam, all of us figuring out, okay, where does this fit in?
Fire out, that was the thing. It's actually your engagement with the choice, is this mine or not? And the cultivation of competence in relation, which could be very complex competence.
Mm.
The grief of recognizing that you got drawn into something and it separated you from your kids. And now they've got like a ripple in their experience that is going to be with them forever, or, the dealing with that and healing, that's going to be a real challenge. Okay. And this is a complex thing, man. Reality is so far beyond our capacity. It's really critical to grasp that. Like, you cannot master this thing at all, not even a little bit. And, okay. And this, we come back to the kind of the Christian discipline at the center.
Mm.
It is actually at the center, is to recognize the degree to which you have no idea what's going on. You have no ability to actually plan properly how to engage with this thing well, right? You could do you've been given a very specific amount of agency, and it's not much, and you can do a little bit. Yeah, you can probably make eggs. Right? You can maybe drop your kid to school without getting in a wreck. Right? That's okay. Beyond literally that level, and I'm being facetious, but beyond that level, if you think you've got a handle on things beyond that, you're actually getting yourself further and further away from reality.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but glory is, it turns out that God's right there. And that there's actually an entire thing that's helping you. And if you just learn how to build faith, like to learn how to let go of that first person and flip through the air, there is another person on the other side that's going to grab your hands, right? You got to build that competence of being in relationship with the actual infinite, which is specifically here to not help you, to guide you and navigate you for big capital P purposes through complex reality, right? Mm. That's the kind of that's the version of the gospel, right? Right in the middle of that sphere in the center.
Mm. Someone on the video I released this morning, which was on the first part of this video, made a comment about Jordan, how, yeah, he's really changed since we saw him a number of years ago. And he was sort of like the rest of the apocalyptic tarts out there. And now, and the point he just made here, again, is this. It was that Jack Symes guy that Jordan Peterson talked to. There was one point in that conversation where it almost sounded like Jack Symes was basically saying, yeah, you Christians, you have all of these resources that the atheist and the agnostic doesn't have, and it's just not fair. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. It's sort of like someone who's got no education is like looking at all those people with degrees and like, well, you people went to school and have studied. Or it's someone who's, standing at the gym with this tiny little white scrawny body looking at, everyone who's been to the gym and has muscles, and everyone who's like really athletes. It's like, yeah, you put in the time in the gym. It's just not fair. Hit the gym. Hit the books. Listen to Jordan Peterson. Sort your life out, for Pete's sake. Don't blame the Christians because they watch this crazy, chaotic, completely changing world, watching all of our little vocations explode, and our institutions just sort of disrupted, and saying, yeah, you Christians, you have like this idea of providence, that somehow this is in God's hand, and yet, I finally did listen to the DW exclusive with Jordan Peterson and Jack Symes, and it is outstanding. You Christians, you have all this confidence, and you're always working on building your faith that, even as you're not sure what vocation you're getting at, or or that somehow God is over all of this, and this entire movement of history is building to a crescendo, whether you're post-mill or a-mill or just, pre-trib, wash it through your own eschatology, be my guest. But God is working all of this to the top of the mountain, the glorious kingdom of God, and that's where it's going. So on one hand, you might be pulling your hair out, you might be frustrated, you might not know what to do next, you might have all of these things, but back in your heart, you're going to the church, your Christian discipline, your Bible reading, your prayer, your communion of the saints, all of these things, while you're feeling like you might go crazy trying to put out all the fires, still at the bottom of it, our God reigns. In this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. Yeah, you Christians have that. And what that means is that when everybody's losing their mind, Christians can say, yeah, I understand that. I'm really tempted to lose mine too, but I have Christians around me in my church that are not losing their minds at the moment. We sort of take turns with each other with our mind losing, and say, although the wrong seems off so strong, he is our ruler yet. This is my Father's world. So, it's crazy. But I, again, believe, the stunning portion of my conversation with John was, okay, so you might have Socrates or something like that, but This game is best played in communion and community with other people, that we're all checking notes together on, okay, do I got Jesus right? Am I hearing him right? And you say this, and they says this, and they says this. That's a feature, not a bug, because we're all working on the same team, and we actually believe that. The crazy thing about this world is that Tim Keller used to point this out, or at least I heard him point it out once, and it stuck in my head. On one hand, in this meaningful world, you need to know that things are crazy. Things are dangerous. People die. In fact, all of us die. It's and there's suffering and there's pain. So high meaning. But at the same time, if you only have that, you will get lost in anxiety and pain and fear, and then you'll probably act poorly because you're out of your depth and you're out of your reach, and you're trying to do something that you really can't do, and you're just going to make things worse. And human history is full of that. But on one hand, you need to know that there is meaning and the purpose, and things are tough and difficult, and you have to act, and all of that is true. But on the other hand, Jesus is Lord. God still reigns in heaven. This is the story that he is knitting together. And if you can have both of these things, and if you can hold both of these things, then actually, this is why I would say misery, deliverance, gratitude. We don't work deliverance out of fear. We work deliverance out of gratitude, because we know we'll screw up. We always do. But we actually believe that God takes all of, there's so many pastor illustrations that we do. It's the toddler sits down at the piano and starts plunking along, and the master pianist comes and takes the child's plunking and turns it into beauty. That's our lives. And that's the Christian life. And yeah, it's crazy making, the figuring out what to do. The next point that Calvin Robinson is going to make here.
This has been, it's been a lot of publicity this week about you deciding to leave the UK. Yeah. This, from what I can gather, from what you said, has been something that's been going on in your mind for quite some time. can I ask, was there a kind of catalyst? You thought, right, that's it. Actually, yes, I'm going to go.
Yeah, so this has been in the works since October of last year. So it's almost been a year in the process. And it was going to take a bit longer, actually, to get all of this sorted. There's lots of bureaucracy, meetings with bishops, there's immigration stuff to consider, all that stuff. But the catalyst has been this Labour government, absolutely. Since they've come into power, things have gone down the pan so fast to a degree that
I don't know anything about any of the British politics. I don't follow it. I don't care for American politics. Why would I monkey in somebody else's?
Even I wasn't expecting. I've been saying it's going to be bad for so long. I'm sure you have too. And so I thought, well, why am I still here? If I can go somewhere else and fight the good fight from a location with resources, with people, with essentially joining an army. I'm sick and tired of being one of the very few in the infantrymen. And I want to become one amongst many. I want to join them.
Now, so he's going to monkey around in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And part of me just can't wait to see this, because you might be surprised who else is in the trenches with you in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But no, come on. I don't know what Father Robinson, I don't know what name I should say. We're not alone. We're not alone. My God, why have you forsaken me? We feel alone. He was alone. We are not. We are not. Whether it's a Labor government or the, I don't even know. Tories, I think that's who the other group are. I mean, some of my British friends are now like holding their heads, like, you know, yeah. I like I said, I used to be a news junkie. I'm so done with this blue-red game in America. I'm sorry. I started out this channel telling y'all I'm a political skeptic and a religious believer. So there's the story. But yeah, you figure out your cross. We'll end with these two. End with these two on the screen. You figure out your cross and you bear it. And now with all of the social media stuff and figuring that out, you follow that lamb wherever he goes. So leave a comment.